So, so we're going to talk about leadership, high stress environments, high stress situations. That's kind of the crux of the conversation. But again, I'm going to kind of navigate between a couple of principles, one being leadership and one being decision making. The two can go hand in hand if you're highly successful at your job. If you've been doing this a long time, there's several different things that have to come together for an individual to be a good leader and a good decision maker. The two can go hand in hand, or they can be so far apart. I've seen people that are very good managers, very good decision makers. They can manage processes very well, but I wouldn't lead that person through a grocery store, right? I wouldn't follow that person through a grocery store. Like, they're just not cut out for it. And there's also people that are excellent leaders. They're visionaries. People want to follow them. They're charismatic. They've got that leadership, the trait just down to a T. And those people sometimes can't manage processes. So they may not be very good at decision making, but very good at leadership. So think about, and occasionally I'll use sports analogies. Any football fans? Okay. All right, who do you think on a team would be a likely manager, decision maker?
Quarterback.
Quarterback would be one. Who else?
Center.
Center. I would say coach too, right? Because the coach is executing a plan, right? The coach, he or she is putting together that plan for the entire year. They know all the steps, starting with recruiting, putting the team together, getting all the right positions filled out. But there's some coaches, they're excellent coaches, but not good leaders. And there's also quarterbacks it's a great position when you talk about leadership, because when you start out in the huddle, that quarterback is leading that team. They're locked on every word that person says, and they're going to take them to the promised land, right? They're going to put them in the end zone. So, again, sports, there's a tremendous amount of analogies that you can make with things like leadership and decision making when it comes to sports. So about a year ago, I relocated to Driggs, Idaho, took a fire chief's position in Teton County. Anybody ever spent time in the Tetons? Okay, if you haven't, I highly recommend it. I live in probably one of the most beautiful places in the country. Like, I walk out of my office and there's a Grand Teton. It's a pretty special place. So in 32 years, I didn't intend to bounce around. I thought I was going to ride this career out in Rapid City, South Dakota, and I was in charge of an amazing, amazing organization. Some of the best people that I could ever work with. Some of the best friends that I ever had. And the reason that we had that bond and that brotherhood and sisterhood and feeling like a family is because we were in extremely critical and high stress situations together. When you go through something like that with a group of people, there's a bond that's formed. So, I've been in situations with other men and women that I care to not go back to, but I'm thankful I was there. I'm thankful to have lived through some of them, and I'm really thankful for who I got to serve with. Like, again, some of the absolute best people. Hell, they may not even be that great. Just the fact that they kept me from dying, right, created a bond. So Rapid City ended up in Bozeman for about 6 years. I thought this was going to be my landing place, and then I ended up with a special opportunity to move down to Driggs, Idaho. But 32 great years. I wouldn't change any of it. But it's given me some things along the way. A lot of great experience. I was always seemed to be put in positions to move to the next rank. Things just went my way, and I will say I'm an extremely humble person, but I've just been really fortunate in my career to always move up the ranks and been successful in holding high-level positions. So, and we'll talk a little bit about what it takes to go through that process. And it's a constant struggle. I'm constantly trying to evolve. I'm constantly trying to stay relevant, regardless if it's been 32 years or 32 months. I'm always looking to advance myself personally and professionally. So we're going to walk a little bit through just the kind of a contrast or a dichotomy between leadership and decision making, because again, like I said, they don't always go hand in hand. So if you just do an internet search of leadership, you're going to find a few things that are going to continue to come up. Leadership styles, you're going to find a number of different definitions, and then of course examples of leadership. There's, anybody know what autocratic leadership is? Autocratic leadership is, it's my way or the highway, very frank, there's no talking back, there's no second guessing. This is what I want you to do, and I want you to do it right now. That's autocratic. As a fire chief, if I'm on scene of an incident, that's an autocratic style that I'm basically putting on the people on that scene. It's very frank, it's very pointed, and there's no second guessing, there's no talking back. It's very autocratic. What about diplomatic? It can be in a less controlled environment, more of a conversation. There can be some feedback, consensus-based. We can have a conversation about what we need to do, and then at the end of that conversation, I'm going to ask you to do something, and I'm going to need you to do it. But it's more friendly and more casual. So you'll find all different kinds of examples and definitions. However, leadership is not management. Okay? Again, leadership is a style. It's a personal trait. Some people are good at it, some people aren't. I would say you're almost born a natural leader. You can try really, really hard to study leadership. You can try really hard to become a good leader. And if you're not cut out for it, it's probably not going to happen. And I've seen a lot of people that have tried to be leaders and it just didn't work for them. And much to their disappointment. So the leadership definition basically is taking a group of people or an organization in a desired direction to accomplish or achieve an agreed upon outcome or goal. And I want you to just think about leadership as taking people and accomplishing something. That's where like that head coach comes into place, or quarterback. This is the goal, whether it's winning the Cat Grizz game, it's going to the national championship, or it's putting a team in the end zone. I'm going to try to get a group of people to go with me and accomplish that goal. And the key is, for me to be successful, the reason that it's not management, it's more of a personal trait. I have to influence other people to do what I'm asking them to do. And they have to be willing to follow. And that I said about, like, some people fail at trying to be a good leader. It's because they couldn't get people to follow. What would be some reasons why you wouldn't want to follow somebody?
You don't trust their decisions?
Probably number one answer, right? Because you don't trust them. What else? And there's a lot of things that spin off of trust, right? What about credibility? What if they're not credible, right? Goes along with trust. Think about it in an emergency setting. If I've got a fire chief that's asking me to do something that could possibly put me in harm's way, if I don't trust the person telling me that, am I going to risk my life, right? That's a challenge for me, right? And I've been in situations where I've had people ask me to do things and I didn't trust them. And that just doesn't set you up for success. So you've got to be able to influence people, and they must be willing to follow. So now, a little easier way to measure people is in their ability to make good decisions, their decision-making process. So again, if you go back to the internet, you do a search for decision-making, you're going to find steps. What are the steps to making good decisions? You'll find decision-making styles, and then a key thing is processes, along with all the different definitions. It'll talk about what's the process to get something done? What's the process to make a decision? And there's all kinds of like acronyms and different ways to make good decisions. And if I'm just managing a process, it's easy for me to use all of those different tools to make good decisions all day long. But if you can couple leadership and good decision making, now you're talking about somebody who could be highly successful in a high stress environment. So like I said, I can train and I can prepare myself to make good decisions. And between my training and education, I've studied decision making a lot. Read books, taken college courses, upper level, higher level education. And I think I've got processes in place and certain things that have worked for me in the past that I'll go back and exercise almost every time. So the key here is decision-making is an action or a process producing desired outcomes. The difference between leadership is the people, okay? If I'm gonna be a leader, I've got to influence people, get them to do what I want them to do. Decision-making, it's all about process. You see the difference between the human side of being a good leader and just the decision-making is managing a process. So, and we'll explore a little bit of both, and then we'll kind of bring it back in a couple of specific incidents that I responded to, and then we'll kind of tie them together throughout. So success in a high-stress leadership position begins long before an incident. And again, to be successful, I can't just jump off the couch one day and run out and practice good decision-making and be a leader in a high-stress environment. It takes years and years of preparation. This was a fatality fire in kind of, I would say, more central western Bozeman. A gal, she had an accidental fire in her apartment, and we ended up, it was an 8-plex, so we had to evacuate 7 different apartments tied to this one that was on fire, and then we ended up actually finding a person inside that had succumbed to her injuries. So again, to prepare, it's going to take me a long, long time to get ready for that. So when I build a foundation to be a good leader and function in a high-stress environment, I think of an analogy like a 4-legged stool. So envision a stool with 4 legs that holds that thing up on solid footing, right? You can sit on it, it's pretty comfortable, and it holds you up. So the 4 legs to that stool, for me to prepare for these positions, is first off the personal side, me taking care of me. So that means I have to be physically, emotionally, and mentally ready to do the job. And that's really taking care of my well-being. If any one of those things isn't right, I tell people that work for me all the time, I'm going to ask you some really basic things when you come to work for me every day. I want you to be physically, mentally, and emotionally ready to do the job. And if you can't answer yes to all 3 of those things, you really kind of need to check yourself at the door and decide, should I be at the fire station today because I'm not ready, okay? You think about the things that firefighters and police officers are asked to do every day, or people in public safety, even the military. If they're not whole, right, either mentally or physically, should they be there? Can they rise to the occasion? Can they be above average in what they're going to be asked to do that day? And I will tell you, I went to work some days and I wasn't. And those were the days where something bad could happen to me when I wasn't at my best. So it's been something that I've learned over the years, is that I really need to check that box and make sure that I'm good when I go to work. The training and certificates, sure, that's always, training for us and earning certifications is an ongoing process. I'm working on certifications right now as we speak, even at this stage of my career, still trying to raise the bar and earn higher levels of qualifications. So the training never stops, nor does that seeking additional certifications. But that gives me the basis for just having the knowledge, what I need to do my job. And then experience. Has anybody heard the term RPDM, or rapid prime decision making? Ever heard of that? Okay, RPDM, it's think about like a slide tray. Okay, of course you guys are probably young enough where you may not. Anybody ever seen a slide deck? Right? Okay, so think of it, your phone, right? You open the photos up in your phone and you can scroll through all the pictures. Okay, everything that I've seen in my 32 years, every time I take a snapshot or I see something significant, it's like putting a picture in my photo album, okay? And I can draw back to those. It's actually a process. It's been studied. This recognition prime decision making makes people like firefighters better because they draw back on previous experiences. If I go to an incident and I see something really significant, whether it's going good or bad, I'm going to take a snapshot of that just naturally, and it's going to go kind of in my photo album. And if I ever see something similar to that again, I'm going to be able to draw back, and I'm going to kind of remember what about that went well or what didn't go well. So the experience is really, really important, and you gain that experience throughout your career. You know, we've all heard of like OJT, right, on the job training. That is certainly a big thing for us, in that you're always learning based on what you're seeing or what you're experiencing. And then just like you guys being at Montana State, you're participating in a higher level of education outside of high school. And I would argue, to be in my position and be successful, I also need to have gone through some level of higher education. And that wasn't the case. It used to be a firefighter, it was more of a trade, and you know, you could just be a hard worker, be tough, be willing to work hard, and you could get a job with the fire department. And that's not the case nowadays. It's more of a profession. You know, they pay us well, we get good benefits, we have good working conditions, but they expect us to also be smart. So when we talk, you know, entry-level firefighters come in the door, we talk about expectations. We talk about, I need you to be smart, tough, and nice. And those are kind of cornerstones to be a good firefighter, but kind of making it oversimplified. So those are the 4 things. Me as a person, I need to be whole. My training and certifications, that experience or that slide deck, and then higher education. And if any one of those things isn't relatively equal to the others, if one of the legs of that stool is shorter, there's a potential for that stool to topple. Okay, so a lot of people will put all their eggs in experience. They're like, you know what, if I want to be the best firefighter or the best fire chief, I just need to have a whole bunch of experience. It's like, yeah, but you also got to go through the training and certifications. Or they might have all the technical stuff, but they're going through a divorce, or they've got post-traumatic stress in their life, or something bad has happened to them at home, or they have an injury. They're not going to be able to function at a high level. So those 4 things are really kind of the foundation to good sound decision making and leadership when it comes to those high stress environments. Okay, so they're different, right? What's different? If I'm just being a leader, maybe I'm good at it, maybe I'm trying to be good at it, am I a good decision maker, I'm managing processes, maybe I manage a business or whatever. What's the difference in these high consequence, high stress situations? What do you think would be different about that? So this is Red Lodge, Montana, a year and a half ago. Robertson drop fire bearing down on the town of Red Lodge. And they're like going to evacuate the town. And this thing did like 30,000 acres, and like I said, like was going to wipe Red Lodge off the map. The fire didn't, but then a flood did. Within a year later, almost wiped it off the map. Red Lodge had a tough couple of years, but so if I'm going to manage that incident, what's different? Why is it harder?
You have high consequence, but you're not necessarily like on the fire itself, so you don't have that stress.
Yep. So just consequences, right? So what would be some examples?
Like if you're in a business environment and like you make a mistake in decision making, you might just cost the company some money, some profit, whatever. But here you're costing lives or equipment and people's livelihood.
Right.
Your own livelihood here.
You're right. If I make a decision and I'm managing a business, it's going to hurt the bottom line, right? Or might hurt the business itself or our public perception or image. But when I'm dealing with people, whether it's people that I'm there to protect or the people that work for me, it raises the bar. If there's one thing that keeps me awake at night and has caused probably some of the most quick story. I worked with a guy in Bozeman for about 5 years, and he was diagnosed with a terminal brain cancer, and he had a tumor in his brain here a few years ago, and he passed away this morning. So I apologize. That's just a tough one. So anyway, if there's one thing that keeps me awake at night and causes me a lot of stress, it's having somebody who works for me get hurt, right? I've seen a lot of people die that I didn't know. That is That is also stressful. And I would never say I would get numb to it, but I've seen so much death that it just gets to where you just almost get used to it. Not numb to it because someone has died, and it's a lot of times, it's a family's worst day, but you get a little bit conditioned to that. But when you're dealing with life safety, it's a big deal. So here's kind of some specifics. So the complexity can vary. When I say that the complexity can vary, we kind of just talked about it. If lives are at stake, that's about as complex as it gets for me. All right? If people in the public can die from my decisions or how I manage this incident, that's a pretty complex incident. Okay? Another example of a complex incident would be, here's a great picture. You guys might have saw this in the news the last year and a half from the Bridger Foothills fire, which took place right above the end in the Bridgers. But that complexity can vary. It can be a very simple operation, very simple incident, or it can be the highest of complexity. Another example would be a fire that is moving through a neighborhood, burning down dozens of homes. So the afternoon of the Bridger Foothills fire, the day after this picture was taken, we lost 30 homes in an afternoon. High stress, high consequence environment, very complex incident. We had a crew out of a helicopter, a state of Montana helicopter, got burned over. So we had 2 firefighters that were entrapped in the fire and had to use their fire shelters and the fire burned over them. We were losing homes at that time. We had firefighters experiencing a tremendous amount of stress, and some of them were not conditioned for that, and they even said, this is too much for me. So some of them went back out to the highway and just kind of disengaged. And so between the burnover, having a couple people that were trapped in the fire, losing dozens of homes, and firefighters that were at their max, really they were stressed out to a point where they were becoming ineffective, we did what's called a tactical pause, or we'll do like a safety stand down. But tactical pause is kind of a quick term we'll use. But so what we did is we get on the radio and we say, everybody disengage, back off, let this thing run its course, let this fire go, get back to a safe zone, get someplace with your crew where we can sit back and be safe and watch the fire go by. And we did that, and that's about the time that it jumped the highway, the Bridger Canyon, and then we were able to start catching on the other side of the road. But so we'll do what's called a tactical pause. But so time can get extremely compressed, where decisions, I'm having to make decisions so fast because so many things are happening. I can get overwhelmed by that. And Bridger Foothills, again, there were multiple things going on, and it was happening so fast that the radio traffic, everyone's talking radio, everybody needs things like, hey, I've got homes threatened by a fire, or you've got 2 firefighters calling on the radio asking for the helicopter to come in and extract them, and the helicopter can't get in there because the winds are buffeting the ship around and they can't land. You see this wall of fire coming over the Bridgers, and it's bearing down on literally a couple hundred homes, and you can't even comprehend the radio traffic because there's so much. So the time just gets, you can't make decisions fast enough because it's happening so quickly. So the physical response, does that sound like a stressful environment? A little bit, right? Can you imagine the physical response that you would feel, right? You feel like messing yourselves in your pants. It's so bad. I've seen people vomit. I've seen people pass out. I've seen people profusely sweating, can't talk because they're maxed out. So the physical response goes back to the 4 legs of that stool. The first one was, I have to be physically, mentally, and emotionally ready to go do the job. If I'm not, this physical response can really take me out of the game. So I have to be prepared for that. The emotional response, I may see things, which is the next point, seeing something for the first time, or I may see something that is so graphic or so violent or something I've never seen in my life before, and you're just standing there like, what is going on, right? And it's just, I don't have any slides for that. I don't have any pictures from that before. It's something I've never seen before. And I gotta tell you, it seems like whatever's going on in this world today, there's getting to be more and more of that crap going on, okay? Whether it be active killer incidents, whether it be wildfires that are burning entire communities down, it just seems like the bar continues to get raised. And as a first responder, we're seeing things today that 32 years ago, I would have never imagined what you're even talking about. And now it's like, hey man, it's Thursday. Who knows what's going to happen tonight, right? Who knows? And so you're just seeing so much nowadays for the first time. And then there's that sympathy and empathy, that emotional response if I see something. Can it be, I have a daughter that's in this room. She was little at one time. When she was 6 years old, if I went to a call with a 6-year-old little girl that I had to do CPR on because she drowned, imagine now, all I see is a 6-year-old daughter, right? Or the mom is pounding on my back while I'm doing CPR on a 6-year-old little girl. All I can think about is, I have a 6-year-old little girl, right? So that's that empathy. Can I relate? Can I feel like they're in their shoes? And I have to push through that. I have to set that aside, stay focused, and continue to do the job. So those are just some examples of what can make these situations so much more different than an average everyday running a business or decision making, etc. So we're put in really, really high stress situations, and we have to have the tools to be able to kind of navigate that. So like I said, at times, those processes and all those things that I just listed out can overwhelm you and render you ineffective. See, there was a friend of mine was an incident commander at Dallas Fort Worth Airport, and they had a plane crash. I think it was back in the, maybe mid-90s. Anyway, plane crash. They had, it was over 100 fatalities, and this guy's running this incident. He's leading firefighters in there. They're trying to rescue people out of this plane. They're putting the fire out, and that day they had 3 firefighters in the midst of trying to save people and pulling bodies out of there. They had 3 firefighters that walked off to the side of the runway, took all their firefighting gear off, in their socks, walked back to the fire station and said, "I'm done." And they walked off the job that day, never came back. In their socks, because they took their firefighting boots off, walked to the fire station, changed clothes, got in their pickups, and drove home. I say pickups, that's real better trucks. But anyway, it can overwhelm you. And so this was a fire that I went to, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in a few slides, but anybody, we got some Montana people. How about northern, eastern Montana? Anybody heard of a little town called Denton, Montana?
Denton or Dayton?
Denton. D-E-N-T-O-N. Small farming community. Hundreds of people live there, maybe 1,000. Small town. December 1st, a year and a half ago, a wildfire kicked off during a wind event and blew through a portion of the town, destroyed about 25 homes. So, and we'll talk about the incident and my role there. Anyway, I was up there the evening that it happened. We were dealing with the incident, but the next morning I'd gone out to do what's called damage assessments. So we had to get a real account for the damage that occurred in the community. How many homes did we lose? How many homes were damaged? What are the needs? What do we got to do to get this community stood back up? Driving down the alley, and I'm counting homes and counting outbuildings that had burned down. Driving through this alley, look really closely. I mean, this picture is zoomed in. This little gal is sitting on this stump, and I'm like, what in the world? And I stop and I walk over there, and she's just sobbing. And I'm like, what? Are you okay? And she's like, I'm fine. I said, were you here last night? She goes, yeah, I was in my house throughout the whole fire. And I said, well, what can I do for you? And she just kind of looked at me, and she was weeping, and I'm like, I didn't know what to do. I was overwhelmed with emotion. I felt bad for her. And she said, This was like a lean-to garage kind of shop thing. This was all her firewood for the year. This happened December 1. She just lost all the firewood of which she heats the house that she lives in. And she's like, if you could get me some firewood. And I'm just like, man, I'd be better off if her house was on fire. I'd know what to do. She's asking me for firewood. And I'm like, holy shit. I don't have any firewood in the back of my fire truck, right? So, like, there are times when you, like, that really, it just caught me off guard. And I walked over there and thinking she's just sad because she lost an outbuilding. And then you start thinking about the gravity of the situation. Like, she just lost the ability to heat her home. That's the only heat she uses is that firewood. And she stocks that firewood up in the fall, and she had just lost it all. Not a great time to be a firefighter. Okay, so preparation. I can prepare for some of that stuff. This is getting ready for Cat Grizz a couple years ago, sitting over there in the fifth story in the command post right about the 50-yard line. We get everybody in one little room and we run the football game. Granted, there's the NCAA folks and the coaches from one team are in a box next to us. The other coaches are in another box. But we're running the public safety part of it that you guys don't even know is going on. We're up there. I can see you when that's your worst and best behavior. We got binoculars. We're watching people. I can tell what seat you're in. Blah 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 blah. It's great. But what a vantage point. But you can see in that picture, I'm prepared. I have my radio. I even have a spare battery. So if this battery fails, I've got an extra battery with me. I've got binoculars so I can see good. I've got a map of the entire football field with all the sections. We've got extraction points on there, so if we need to bring a patient out, I know where to send an ambulance. It's all laid out. It's this well-orchestrated plan, and so we're very prepared for just about anything that can occur at that football game. We've got a National Weather Service person in there that's giving us a live weather forecast, monitoring clouds. We've got the National Guard. There's a hazardous materials response. Every state has a team. They're going around in civilian clothes and they're checking for hazardous materials, and if anybody, like an active terrorist kind of thing, let me tell you the security that's in place that you guys don't even know. Let's just say tough SOBs that are in tactical gear, that are in high positions, watching everything that's going around this place, making sure that it's safe. It's all preparation. And we're there and we're ready. If anything bad happens, I've got a plan right there in paper that we can execute should anything bad happen. So all for your guys' safety. Okay, so basis for decision making, talking about being prepared, we use a standard system for the organization of what we're going to set up. And I'm going to get into kind of the technical part of my job, and then we'll bring it back with more of the human side. But we use what's called an incident command system. The military uses it. It originated in the military to basically go to battle and manage all your resources and all your people. You've got a plan. You're moving people around. It could be on a world stage. It could be even in one country. That was picked up by the state of California in a document called Fire Scope. And then now it's gone pretty much nationwide, and we just call it the Incident Command System. And then we build an organization, and we determine what is the desired outcome, how do we want to deal with this situation, and we build an organization. We put people with strengths in certain positions. We have people that develop a plan. We have a finance section chief that makes sure we have the money to do what we need to do. We have operations people. They're the technical experts, whatever you're dealing with. We've got logistics. Logistics is in charge of making sure that everybody has food, water, porta potties, fuel for fire trucks. They just take care of all of the things that we need to do our jobs. So we build out this organization and we right size it for the incident, which means the bigger the incident, the bigger the organization. So we type incidents from 5 to 1, okay? 5 is the smallest incident. A type 5 incident would be like a small car accident at an intersection. A type 1 incident, this was a type 1 incident, Bridger Foothills fire, 30 homes, several hundred people evacuated. The town of Bozeman severely impacted from it. Recreational opportunities shut down. We had a type 1 team come in and manage that incident for several days. So that's the highest complexity. We talked about incidents can differ by complexity. So we right size the organization to whatever the complexity of the incident is. And then we set our objectives. And I threw in there the LIP acronym. Remember I said the most significant incident for me is going to be those that involve life safety, okay? Whether it be the safety of the responders or the public. So that LIP acronym is life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation. So I think about lives, stabilize the incident, whatever's bad happening, make it stop. If it's a fire, we put the fire out. If it's an active killer, we take the bad guy out. Whatever is going wrong, whether it's a flood, we try to remove people from the flood area. So whatever it looks like, we try to stabilize that incident. And then P, the last thing we consider is property conservation, which, you know, obviously the best example I can give you is if lives are threatened, we're going to take care of that first, and then we'll take care of the environment or property last. So develop a plan with contingencies. Every good plan has a backup plan, right? And we typically run in threes. So I'll develop a plan, I'll typically have a backup plan, and I'll have a backup plan to the backup plan if that fails. So when things go wrong, I can we say pivot a lot. I can pivot and I can do something else. So then we're going to execute that plan, and we're going to constantly reevaluate and adjust, because a lot of times the target is moving on us. The fire moves, it hits another ridge top, or a fire burns through a building and now it's up to the second floor or third floor. Things move, it's very dynamic, so we're always having to reevaluate and adjust. And I don't want to bore you too much with the technical stuff, but so now, if I want to prepare myself to be in charge of an incident, what are some things that I'm going to do to prepare myself to make good decisions? One is what we call it good SA, have good situational awareness. That's just being, we talk about have your head on a swivel, be head up, not head down. I'm constantly evaluating the environment. I'm aware to my surroundings. I'm taking in as much information as I can. Good situational awareness. We have job aids. Remember in the picture when we were getting ready for the football game, I had that, there was a piece of paper there, a stack of papers. That is what we'd call like a FOG, or field operations guide. So everything I need to know about the incident when it occurs is in that operations guide. Response planning. If you looked at my command vehicle that I work out of, I have a crew cab pickup. I can't get anybody in the back seat because I've got so many plans and radios and batteries. I've got bins in there. So like Montana State has an emergency operations plan that's about that thick. You guys, everybody signed up for the Safe Cats alert? Okay, great. All those things, if you're not, you should check it out. It's really pretty decent thing. If there's something going on emergency-wise that you need to know, you get an alert on your phone. It's an app. So I would strongly encourage you to do it. I'm signed up. Even in Driggs, Idaho, I'll get a notice for something that's going on campus. We have a lot of plans should things happen, whether it be hazardous materials, a building fire, a forest fire, a flood, power outage, you name it. Civil unrest, whatever. Resource availability. As a fire chief, I'm constantly paying attention to what resources are available to me. If something bad happens right now, where's my nearest fire departments? Can I get help from other departments? I know about moving down a little bit the status of my personnel. Are we short-staffed today? Do we have extra staff on? If I know that, like what's called a red flag day, the hottest, driest days in the summer, and we're expecting forest fires to go big on that particular day. Think of like an August day where it's 100 degrees and windy out. If I know that we're going to be in that type of a condition, I'm going to bring on extra personnel and be prepared for it. Identifying risk, you know, we're constantly getting information, whether it be from the state about terrorist threats. The wildfire is a good example about weather conditions, which is like weather and time of year. Again, just constantly gathering information. That is a constant process. Every day I wake up, I start thinking about all those things. Right now, going on in my community, it's the threat of avalanches. Like we're getting avalanches like going right across the highways around Jackson and Teton Pass and all that. So time of year, identifying risk, heavy snow load, and the mountains are shedding snow right now. So a little bullet at the end, it's a quote that I always think of, which encourages me to lean into it and always gather more information. I can never have enough information for a good decision, so I'm always looking for more. So the Denton fire, December 1st, 2021, we got called. I was on an incident management team in eastern Montana, ready for big incidents. We get called to Denton, Montana for a wildfire that's burning up a town. I'm like, it's like a day like today. It's cold, it's windy, it's December 1, we should not be in forest fire mode. And lo and behold, we had 70+ mile-an-hour winds, blew through the town of Denton and burned about 25 homes. This was a grain elevator that burned up. So we got up there, we determined what we had, we built that organization, we built the organization to the right size of the incident, we developed objectives, what do we want to accomplish while we're here? Like I said before, we developed a plan, executed it, and we reevaluated and adjusted. So how do we relate this leadership? How do we bring the human factors, human traits to this process that I can have for decision making? So a couple of things we do. This comes from more of the wildfire realm, but there's a thing what's called leader's intent. And what leader's intent, the definition there is, it's a clear, concise statement about what people must do to succeed in their assignments. And so if I'm going to go to a forest fire and I've got 300 people working for me, I want to have good leader's intent. And the way I do that is I provide them with task, purpose, and end state. The task that I'll tell those people is, here's the objectives, here's the goal, this is what I want you to do for an assignment. Purpose, this should be important to you guys, right? Because it's a generational thing. Why? Why am I doing this, right? So I provide the task, here's what I want you to do. The purpose is why I want you to do it. And then the end state is, what does right look like? What does success look like? So if I give you those three things, it goes back to trust, credibility. I'm trying to influence people. I need them to follow me. I'm trying to lead them to the promised land. I need them to follow me. I need to give them these things. This has been proven to be a tool to get people on board. Sometimes I don't have the luxury to develop relationships and develop trust. Sometimes if I'm going to Denton, Montana on an afternoon, I may have people assigned to me coming to work for me that I've never met before. So I have to do some rapid team building, and I have to be charismatic. I've got to come across as confident but not cocky. And I've got to provide good leader's intent, clear, concise statement about what it is we're going to do, why we're doing it, and what does right look like. And if I do that in a good way, if I articulate that, it's been proven, people will kind of go along with it if you're able to do this in a good way. Okay, so Winter Storm Atlas, probably one of the biggest incidents that I've ever responded to or ever was put in charge of. It occurred over a 72-hour period, first week in October 2013 in western South Dakota. It was the largest winter storm that was occurring in the country at the time. We were on the Weather Channel. Every major news syndicate across the country was covering this massive winter storm moving across the middle of the country. So Rapid City, town of about 100,000 people. I had about 165 firefighters under my command. Fire chief of that community. We ran out of 7 fire stations responded to close to 20,000 calls a year. This storm hits, we received 30 to 50 inches of snow across town, depending on the elevation. In that 24-hour period, first 24 hours, we had 420 calls in just 24 hours. Those were not everyday run-of-the-mill, I'm stuck, there's a dog barking, blah, 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 like I'm locked out of my house. These were like, we had a baby delivered. We had houses that burned to the ground because we couldn't get to them. We had car fires all over, cars would get stuck, catch fire. Interesting note, in that first 24 hours, we had 120 calls from people that had lost power. Their oxygen concentrators weren't working. So if they had some type of a respiratory problem and they were on a little home concentrator that was making oxygen for them to breathe, when they lost power, they lost their little oxygen concentrator. So we had 120 people calling 911 saying, I'm short of breath, I'm running out of air, I need oxygen. So we used the local snowmobile club with firefighters and we did 120 missions delivering oxygen. And again, we had 20,000 people without power. And interestingly enough, Western South Dakota, it's a big ag part of the country, over 20,000 cattle were lost. So we'll go through this pretty quick. I want to get to the end of it here. We, again, set up the ICS. We opened up an operations center. At 9 in the morning, I became the incident commander to that, the response to Winter Storm Atlas. By 9 p.m., 12 hours later, the entire emergency response system became ineffective. We had firefighters and police officers stuck in their vehicles, out in the streets, and they couldn't move. They were stuck. Zero visibility, snow continued to fall. Firefighters and cops were calling for help. So we were like overwhelmed. At 10 o'clock that night, we had what's called a command and general staff meeting. We pulled together that incident command team, if you will, in the county's operations center. And I stood in a room like this with roughly 20 managers from police, fire, National Guard, all of them. And I said, we're done. Like, we can just shut the lights off. No one can answer 911 calls. Cops are stuck, firefighters are stuck. We are ineffective. Probably the worst day of my life as an incident commander or a fire chief. We had to create a message for the 911 center. When people called 911, we had to create a message to tell them we weren't coming. So when someone calls and says, my wife is 9 months pregnant, she's having a baby, the 911 operator had to tell that guy, they're not coming. So imagine like the system came to a screeching halt. So I told that room of people that night, the decision I had made, we're going to answer 911 calls, we're going to tell them we're not going anymore until conditions improve, which was going to be the next morning. And I had to look 20 of what I would call some of my closest friends and tell them, the decision I just made, we're going to kill people. People are going to die tonight because of the decision I just made. You guys need to get right with yourselves and prepare for what's going to happen in the morning when the roads start opening up and we find out we've got a bunch of dead people in our community. And that was a really, really tough decision. But the leadership thing, right? I gave them my leader's intent and they trusted me. We worked together, we had experience, and they believed my message, and they're like, we got you. So we'll figure it out in the morning and see what happens. So we developed a plan for 7 a.m. And when I did that night at about 10 o'clock, I'm thinking, pretty good chance tomorrow I'm going to get fired. I'm not going to be in charge of the storm. They're probably going to ask me to leave all my shit in my office and go home, which I couldn't get home because the snow was too deep. But I thought, I just made a decision that is going to kill people in my community, and I'm probably not going to be a fire chief after tomorrow. Lo and behold, we made it. Nobody died. We had a lot of bad things happen, but so I got to keep my job. So keys to success, and we're going to start to wrap this up. We talked, number one response, trust. You got to develop trust amongst your team. You got to be a good communicator. I've been blessed. People have told me I'm a good communicator. I don't know why. I have no idea. I just like people. I like working with people, and trust and communications is a big thing for me. Controlling my emotions. Sometimes I'm too emotional, but people like to see that passion. But when I'm in harm's way or I'm sending people in harm's way, I have to stifle that, and I have to show command presence. I have to show that I'm in charge. I'm good with my decisions, and I care about them, and we're going to do good things. So understand that you will have losses. Goes back to the night of Winter Storm Atlas. I had to accept that people were going to die. I just had to accept it, and that's what was going to happen. And luckily it didn't. But here's something my daughter will tell you. I tell her this all the time. Only worry about the things you can affect. This is a life lesson for you guys right now. Think about that. Don't get stuck in things that you can't do anything about. And when I'm managing an incident, hey man, I didn't create this fire. I didn't make it snow 50 inches. I didn't make fire trucks get stuck. I didn't cause that big forest fire up there to burn 30 homes. So I have to somehow wrap my brain around, I only have to worry about what I can affect. What can I do as an incident commander, as a fire chief, as a leader, decision maker? What can I do to make the problem better? And it'll take years to develop those skills. And man, that one night, I could have lost it all. One night. If one or two people would have died that night, I could have been done. So all 30 years of it could have all been down the drain. Some things we do after the incident, we debrief, we check on people's well-being, making sure they're okay before we send them home. This is that mental health part. We put those lessons in writing so everybody can learn from them. And I would say what you do after the incident, what I've learned is just as important as what I did before and all that preparation. And this is where it comes back to me. I have to have systems in place for me. What do I do when I go home? How do I decompress? Hopefully it's not drinking. Hopefully it's not driving fast. Hopefully it's not doing drugs. Hopefully it's not engaging in unsafe, unhealthy behavior. And two probably biggest bullets for me: humility, be humble, and serve those that serve you. Just like the guy who lost his life this morning. Just thinking about his family, love that guy to death, and he's got a 2-year-old daughter, and so that's what motivates me, is taking care of the people that take care of me as a leader. And man, it's amazing what people will do for you if you've got their back. All right, getting right on time. I was hoping I'd have a little more time, but if anybody wants to stick around, I encourage you. I'll be here for a little bit. So leadership in critical and high-stress situations cannot be learned, like I said. You can't learn this stuff. However, I can hone my decision-making skills through experience, training, and education, like I talked about, and preparation. I can prepare for decision-making. I can't prepare to be a good leader. An effective leader will have the personal traits, like we've talked about, the ability to influence others, get them to follow, and have developed the skills to make good decisions when he or she has to. It's a constant pursuit of excellence. It's a constant pursuit of professional and personal growth. I'm continuing on that path. Even later in my career, I will till the day I walk out, till the day I retire. There's a saying, been around a bunch of my friends that have retired lately, and we always talk about sprint across the finish line. Don't stop. Sprint across the finish line. In my 33rd year, I'm going to be working just as hard as I did in year 1. So sprint across the finish line. Sorry, man, I'm out of time with you guys. I'm extremely humbled, proud to be here. I love this university. I think it's a special place. I love Bozeman, Montana. I think you guys are in a great place. I can't imagine a better place to be going to college than here. So anyway, glad to be here. Thank you guys. Anybody has any questions? I know we're up on time here, but like I said, pretty informal. I have a tendency to talk and digress. Anyway, thanks you guys.